Well, Friday's drawing to a close at the 2020 Drum Corps International Winter Meetings, and it has been a day that has kind of seen the focus narrow a little bit on critical decisions that have to be made tomorrow. Hi, I'm Dan Potter, along with Jeff Griffith and the entire DCI News Network team in Indianapolis, where we're getting ready for an exciting day tomorrow.
Yeah, like you said, some tough decisions to make for the instructors and the voting membership, but plenty of other things going on. We'll have the Drum Major Leadership Summit, some really compelling talks about weather safety, and of course, the DCI Family Luncheon.
We know where the real interest lies tomorrow, and that is in the votes on the rules proposals, specifically the one that would allow any kind of musical instrument to be used in Drum Corps starting in the 2021 season. That is the big one, and we're watching that.
Yeah, that proposal was authored by DCI Board Chair Kathy Black. We'll talk to her in a little bit, but we have a full in-depth interview with her that you can get on all of our social channels and our YouTube account.
It might be helpful, though, first to have a quick refresher on how a rule comes to be in DCI, how a proposal goes through the process and may eventually become a rule. Well, Jeff spoke with the DCI Judge Administrator, John Turner, about that process.
Hey everybody, Jeff Griffith here, coming to you from Friday night of the annual meetings in Indianapolis. I'm here with John Turner, Open Class Judge Administrator, to kind of talk through the upcoming Rules Congress that's taking place today and tomorrow. So John, first off, I think just the overarching question a lot of people want to understand is, how does a rules proposal become a rule at DCI?
The first thing somebody has to do to submit a rules proposal is actually fill out a form. We have a form that sits in the rules manual itself, and there are guidelines around how to fill that form out, and it includes a lot of information about what implementing that rule would mean in terms of finances, contest operations, judging, education, a lot of different factors. There's probably 10 or 11 different factors. If it's pertinent to that rules proposal, then it's incumbent upon the submitter to have some sort of support for that rule that says here's what it will do that's positive for the activity in that particular aspect. Once that is completed and submitted, the deadline for that is October 15th. Those rules are compiled by the artistic director and submitted to the task force, who then considers them and looks for anything that maybe isn't really clear in terms of the proposal, or details that are missing, or just additional clarification on what the rule is actually proposing. And they discuss those as part of just the task force, and we bring those with us here. We distribute them out to the masses, so to speak, but we bring those into this weekend, into the Rules Congress, and discuss them in mass as well as in caucuses with the instructors. There's a formal vote on each rules proposal at the end of that process. It's a roll call vote. A simple majority of each of votes for that particular rule determines whether that rule goes on to be considered by the voting membership of DCI, who actually has the ultimate say in whether or not that rule becomes an actual rule.
Why did you, as board chair, decide it was time for you to sponsor this proposed rules change and bring it to this meeting?
Well, first of all, I would say that we have a focus on new revenue in the board. If you look at the strategic plan of Drum Corps International, you're going to see that finding new revenue streams is one of our strategic initiatives, and that fits in with the mission and vision of Drum Corps International, which if you read those, you're going to see that the idea is to get more participants worldwide involved in what our activity has to offer. We already have today a sound sport division that does use all instruments. It's growing, and we as a board are looking at the future. Is there a possibility of growing Drum Corps International in other ways, creating other revenue streams? And so there was a task force put together under the leadership of David Glasgow. A number of people were on the task force, and they looked at possible ways that we might want to, in the long run, grow revenue. So the idea of being able to use any instrument came out of that task force. And some people, I think, have concluded that any instrument would mean that suddenly we're going to have more people in a drum corps. None of those things are proposed at this time. I think they may have been proposed in the past.
Okay.
But the idea here is we don't know where the future will go. We do know that a very large percentage of young people who play instruments in band play woodwind instruments. We know that. It is possible that they could get involved in our activity in sound sport and maybe in the future in other ways. So when we were looking at it, we didn't want to propose an increase in the number of people in a drum corps. That's a very complicated question. It goes to how many vehicles you might have, how many people you need to feed 4 times a day. I mean, there's just a whole host of questions that go into that. And if we were to increase the size of drum corps, there's certainly going to be nothing to say that we wouldn't have 50 more brass players, for instance. Sure. So we really started to study the matter, and we said, well, one of the things we should do is look at the rules as they exist today. And what we found when we looked at the rules were they were sort of incomprehensible, because you can do things like play a synthesized woodwind, but you can't play a real one. You could even bring a woodwind on the field and toss it around like guard equipment, but you can't play it. You can also do things like play an electric guitar, but not an acoustic guitar. So those just seemed incomprehensible to us.
Incongruous, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we just thought, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we propose that we let you use any instrument that you might, not change the size of the drum corps, not change the judging, not force all corps to do this, but just give you the option if someone wanted to use an instrument that is not allowed today, that they would be able to do that. And it's our assumption in proposing this is that there probably would be some soloists, there would probably be some small ensembles, maybe some people in the front ensemble playing, but not marching around. But one of the things that I take away from this is I really do admire the passion people have for our activity. It's amazing, really, when you put out something like this and get hundreds or thousands of comments.
It's a lifetime love affair with this activity. And
it is.
I guess my plea would be understand that Kathy Black loves the activity as much as you do.
Absolutely.
As do all of the corps directors and all the people here at these winter meetings. We're all just trying to find the best path forward, right?
That's what we're trying to do, and we want to bring it to more people worldwide. So read that mission statement.
The Instructors Caucus will have a chance to vote on those rules proposals tomorrow around 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time. And then after that, the rules will go on to the voting membership for the final official vote. Be sure to keep it locked with all of our accounts for the results and the reaction.
Yeah, we'll have it all for you right here, and you can join in the discussion. Now, between all the business sessions today and the workshops, Jeff and I were out in the halls trying to catch up with different corps directors, get updates on their organizations and how they're doing in the off-season. We managed to corral Boston's Chris Holland, Pacific Crest Stuart Pompel, and we'll start here with the brand new director of Seattle Cascades, Brian Smith. Friday morning at the Drum Corps International Winter Meetings, and we've got our first break of the morning, so I thought I'd catch up with Brian Smith, the new corps director of the Seattle Cascades. Brian, welcome to your first winter meetings.
Yes, thanks. Glad to be here.
What's your background in Drum Corps?
So I marched in the Colts and the Blue Knights.
How did you come to Seattle Cascades?
Well, I work for Nike, and I was transferred up there in 2017, and I said I have a drum corps in my backyard, and what can I do to help and give back?
How's the audition process been? How's the off-season going?
It's going really well. We're up about 20% from last year's numbers, and the kids, the vets, are seeing the things that we're doing, the enhancements that we're making, and just eating it all up.
If somebody were to ask me, Dan, tell me what Seattle Cascades are all about. What is their tradition, their image, their brand? How would you describe it to them?
Well, Cascades, they're rooted heavily in the Pacific Northwest, and we're all about family there. It's all about what can we do to uplift and support each other, and that really is our brand. Everything comes second. It's all about what can we do to make sure that we're having a great experience, and we're trying to give that back to the fans.
Are you enjoying this job?
I am. It's been a balancing act because I still work for Nike. It's a great company, and I'm giving back to an activity that helped me get to Nike. Yeah. And I always tell people my cups are filled professionally and personally as well. So It's been fun.
Congratulations
Thank
on the
you.
new gig. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing what Seattle Cascades brings to the field this summer.
Thank you.
PC made an amazing jump this past season. Was it their best season ever last year?
I would have to say yes. Yeah.
Tell me about 2020 in Pacific Crest.
Well, a lot of our folks are returning on the staff. In fact, the entire design team is back with an addition of one more person. And then all the caption heads have returned. So we're very excited to have that staff retention. We have some new people joining the staff. Some folks are going off for, don't have time to do drum corps anymore. And so we've been able to replace those positions. So we're really excited about that. And we had a really good turnout at our audition weekend, with over 100 more students than we had last year. We last year had a little bit of trouble filling spots in the corps. We kind of worked through the winter and spring to do that. We do not have that problem this year, so we're really excited about that. Design team is working on the show. We'll have a little bit of music at our January camp, which is coming up next weekend.
The growth of drum corps in California has been amazing. Pacific Crest's progress, Mandarin's, the open class California corps is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a good environment right now.
It's really fun. It's really fun. Obviously it's a pretty populated place, but we're lucky to have really good music programs in the state. And where I'm in Southern California, it's some great band programs. And that plus the corps directors at the open class have really gotten so much better at how they run their organizations. Their boards have gotten more engaged. And that in turn, we've seen a bigger growth in the open class.
Boston Crusaders have had such momentum the last few years. Climbing. Do you feel that momentum? Does the membership feel it? And do you have goals of winning in 2020?
Everyone wants to win.
Everyone wants to.
We've never won. I think you have to say it and you have to believe it. So sure, why not? Why not us? But I'll also take a step back and say, when we talk about the momentum and what we've been able to do, over the past 3 years now, when you're in the conversation with these groups, with Crown, and you're doing the right thing, and we're gaining traction competitively, but we're in such lofty company. Like, you know what? We're doing the right thing. It's hard to win. These groups, they don't resign from those spots. Like, you literally have to go up and you have to create that show. The kids have to deliver. You have to have the talent. You have to have the off the field structure to travel and to rehearse and perform and eat and be well medically at the highest level. And I do think that's one of the things, that's where I'm putting my emphasis. Like, how do I raise those areas? Because I think on the field, we're knocking on the door. I think we're right there. And these other areas, like, let's continue to improve those because it is going to translate. We've talked about using some performance coaching. I think we're there. I personally use a professional, a life coach, and I benefited, I think, greatly from it. And I'm like, you know what? We should roll that out for our performers. We should bring that in from a staff standpoint, maybe from a design standpoint, someone to help continue to help them develop. So those are the things that I think for us, I'm focused on. I'd love to win in 2020. I have 80 years of fan base and alumni, and I think it'd be great for the activity, but it's tough. I'm not going to say no. Sure, you have to believe it. And I do think that, sometimes the way it plays itself out, I know the fans that I can see in social media, it feels like, boy, it seems like it's the same groups. To me, it just doesn't feel that way. I'm like, I feel like when we came out in Detroit last year, and I watched everyone, and everyone was really good. I mean, I just think all the cores are really good. And I said, you know what? Like, in my opinion, right now, like, we're right in the mix, and we were in the mix for most of the summer. We had some really great nights and some exciting moments, and sure, I want to win.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
I want to win.
We'll leave it there. By the way, Chris Holland, back in September, started a discussion among the directors about props, set pieces, and prop safety. That discussion's continuing here in Indianapolis at the winter meetings, and we're going to go back to Chris in just a moment to hear more about that. But first, let's talk about one of the biggest issues that faces DCI every summer, and that's finding housing for the Corps while they're on tour.
Yeah, it's a complex jigsaw puzzle that we have to put together every year. I caught up with Jim Paxton, DCI's Corps Housing Assistant Manager, and as he told me, it's getting harder and harder every year.
What's some of the work that you guys do as far as finding housing for the Corps?
Well, Jeff Cox, who is the manager for Corps Housing, and we've added a third person this year, Mike Fowle, who will be helping us part-time this year. We start reaching out to high schools, colleges, universities, back actually in the fall for the tour events. And as the tour events actually go online ticketing, we actually then reach out and try to confirm sites. We're looking for places for the Corps to sleep, to shower, and rehearse. So, for example, during the week of championships, we're not just looking for 22 sites for world-class Corps. We're looking for 36 sites because some of the places where they stay, they can't rehearse. So we have to also find rehearsal sites. For 2020, we're looking at 350 plus housing sites for the season.
Yeah, the one thing we hear a lot of at these meetings is just the difficulty and how much more difficult it's gotten in recent years to do this Corps housing process. What are some of the challenges you guys tend to face as you look for Corps housing?
Well, for one thing, liability issues. The school divisions are concerned about opening themselves up to us. Every Corps carries a certificate of insurance naming the school division as an additional insured. Typical amounts are $1 million, $3 million aggregate. So that's an issue. Looking for places that have working showers. So many times now, students are not taking showers in the school, so they use them as storage rooms. They don't use them at all. So when we go in, they have to move things out, and unbeknownst to us, the drains have kind of frozen up, or the hot water is no longer working. So that's an issue. There are numerous things, travel sites, school opening earlier and earlier. That's a big issue, especially later in the season. Starting with Atlanta on to the end of the season, we're dealing with schools being in session while we're actually trying to be there. And we've got several school divisions here locally in Indy that work real well with us for housing and coexisting. And then there's some school divisions say, no, it's just too much of an inconvenience. So, and we recognize, we're asking a lot. We're asking for a place for 160 students and members to sleep, another 50 to 60 adults showering, rehearsing, and we're using athletic facilities. We're using the football team's practice fields and stadium. We're using the showers and things. So really, when you go into a school, you're asking more to use the athletic facilities than you are, for example, the music facilities.
Kind of give us where we stand in 2020 in terms of the use of props and the logistics of using them.
Sure. Well, I mean, first and foremost, we were able to do a deep dive from a committee standpoint around prop safety, starting really last January when we implemented the original roll-up policy a year ago. Because it's a safety policy, we certainly wanted to monitor that throughout the course of the summer and coordinate with the DCI event staff, the CEO of DCI around, hey, how did we do? Like, did we move the needle? What needs to be looked at? What are some more best practices that we can bring into the policy? So right after championships, although everyone's exhausted, I was fortunate to have a great committee to work with. Many Corps represented on that: Santa Clara Vanguard, Carolina Crown, and Blue Devils, and Phantom Regiment. And we immediately started to kind of debrief the summer and talk with the event staff, other Corps directors around, hey, what worked for you, what didn't work for you? Is the language in the policy clear enough? Are there ambiguities that we need to clean up, just from a regulation standpoint, to make sure that we really understand what the height restriction is and where we're going to measure that from. But more than that, it was to go back and say everything we put into this policy is about safety. It's not about competition. It's not about rules and points. We want people to be creative. We have some incredibly iconic shows in part because of these set pieces that have been introduced to the activity. But we have an obligation to make sure that we can handle them on the field, off the field safely, perform on them safely, and model great behavior for other groups who are who are copying us in the performing arts. So some of the big takeaways in September were to go back and look at maintenance, ongoing maintenance. The props changed dramatically from the day we get them at move-in to finals, just the wear and tear. So how we store them, how we transport them. Do we have a process in place, each individual organization, around who is charged with the duty to inspect those regularly? So we put more definition around that. Some of that's inside of the policy, and some of it we took out. It's more of an appendix. It's more best practices. And one of the great things was the policy. We went from talking about it and thinking about it from a pure design standpoint to, okay, the policy will shape the design because we want to be well within the regulation. And we talked about that too. Like, look, these are minimum standards for safety.
You can get the full interview with Chris Holland regarding props and prop safety on our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook account.
Tomorrow, the votes, not just on all instrumentation, but on miking, limits there, amplitude, well, a host of issues that are going to be decided tomorrow. It's going to be very exciting. We'll be here with all the results and reaction.
Yeah, it should be really exciting. Make sure to follow along. For Dan Potter, I'm Jeff Griffith with the DCI News Network.
Thanks for watching. Hey, Dan Potter.
And Jeff Griffith with the DCI News Network.
From the rules proposals to the Drum Major Leadership Summit, we are covering it all at the Drum Corps International Winter Meetings.
Yeah, you can follow along on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and of course, our website, dci.org.
Make sure you leave us your comments and join in the conversation.